And oh, my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Oh, how many eyes are wet right now? Come on. So beautiful. This thing is not working. There we go. The first time I saw that, you know me, I was a bucket of tears. I was, Terrell, are you with me? We're good. We cry at everything. It's so beautiful. What you don't know about this is in 1988, for the Seoul Olympics, this same individual, Derek Redmond, he was running the same race, the 400. And 10 minutes before he was going to run the 400, they pulled him out. They said, your hamstring is injured. We can't allow you to run this race. And he said that defeat wrecked him. And he said, I don't know if I can get over this. And the story is his dad and others began to encourage him. And they said, you know what? You can get through the physical therapy. You can get on to the next Olympics. We're going to help you through it. And as a community, they gathered around Derek. And they began to speak life into Derek, saying, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And when it got time in 1992 in Barcelona, Derek had already shattered the British world record for the 400. And everyone had Derek as going to medal. He was definitely going to medal. They just weren't sure what. Most people kind of thought he was probably going to get gold. And so when you understand that when Derek is running, he's already running against a defeat that he had. And so you can imagine around 150 meters he hits and his hamstring pulls and tears. And you can imagine in that moment the defeat Derek must have felt. But what I love about the story is he's not going to go down in history as the fastest man alive or the fastest man in the 500 or the 400. That's not what he's known for. He's known for something actually more beautiful. His dad steps onto the scene, gets onto the track, and he walks with Derek. And he encourages him. He says, Derek, you can do this, you can do this. And he walks with him. And the beautiful thing is when they get to the finish line, Derek's dad says, finish the race. And Derek experienced a kind of victory that's way bigger than any of us could have imagined. It's the kind of victory that will go down. They call this one of the greatest moments in Olympic history. Not because he experienced defeat, but because his story, his victory story, was changed. It grew into something so much bigger. And so today, we're going to look at a spiritual gift, two of them. We're going to look at the idea of encouragement and shepherding, what those words mean, what those gifts are. But before we do, let me pray with you. God, I thank you. I praise you for bringing us here today. Thank you for stories like Derek's. Thank you that you continue to share with us hope and encouragement. You continue to guide us and you redeem our stories. Thank you, Lord, for your love. Amen. Is this not, I don't think this is working. Yep. I love that's the first thing a sound guy will say. Is it on? Come on, it's on. It's usually not. They're usually right. Okay, we're going to have to, you and me, Paula. Okay, good. I don't need you. I don't need you. You don't control me. So, there's a story in the Gospels in John chapter 5. And John chapter 5, it starts with this idea of Jesus being on the water with his fishermen. And when you begin to read a lot of the scriptures and you begin to see some of the themes and the ideas, a lot of them are repetitious. And they usually put these stories there for meaning and purpose. And so every time you see the phrase, the words water or lake or ocean, for a Jewish person, they're immediately going to be connecting the dots. There's really amazing, crazy things that happen at the water. Because the water for the Jewish people meant chaos, turbulence. It's where things get stirred up. And in the stirring up, in the chaos and the turbulence, that's where spiritual awakening happens. So think about this. Moses parts the Red Sea into a new birth for Israel. Elisha, both of them part the sea in order to start or end a time in their life, a beginning of a new thing. Jesus, when he's at his baptism, the word firmament actually means waters. So watch this now. Jesus at his baptism, the firmament, it separates, and the new thing is about to begin. Over and over again in Scripture, the waters tell us there's some kind of spiritual awakening, some kind of moment of growth that's about to take place. And so there's a story in John chapter 5, 1 through 11. I'm going to read it to you. I just want you to close your eyes without falling asleep. And just listen to these words. Listen to the story. I'll read it to you real quick. Now it happened that while the crowd was pressing around him and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake, and he saw 2 boats lying at the edge of the lake. But the fishermen had gotten out of them and were washing the nets. He got into one of the boats, which was Peter's, and asked him to put out a little way from the land. And he sat down and began teaching the people from the boat. This is the position a rabbi taught from. They always sat. They never stood. They never pounced on you. They never spit on you on the front row. They sat. So Jesus begins teaching. When he's finished teaching, he said, Peter, put out further and let down your nets for a catch. Simon answered and said, Master, we worked hard all night and caught nothing. But, as you say, I will do, and let down the nets. When they had done this, they enclosed a great quantity, I'm sure they're quality fish as well. Pacific, not Atlantic, farm ref. And the nets began to break. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat for them to come and help them. And they came and filled both of the boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw that, he fell down at Jesus' feet, saying, Lord, I'm a sinner. For amazement has seized him and all his companions because of the catch of fish which they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, do not fear, from now you will be catching men. When they had brought their boats to the land, they left everything and followed Jesus. I find it really fascinating. The disciples, they experience defeat. They're sitting there washing their nets, and they're asking, what now? They're in their defeat. They just lost the race. They're sitting there watching all the victors bring in their fish, and they're sitting in their defeat. And I wonder how many of you have been sitting in a defeat. How many of you have experienced some kind of loss or pain or brokenness? You experienced defeat. You tried this new business venture and you had all these great ideas. But when it came time to reveal the product, no one wanted it. The thing fell flat. That relationship you were in, you had so much hope for it. This was going to be a new beginning. It was a new relationship. It was going to be so good. But that relationship went the wrong direction, and now you're beginning to feel defeat again. You're asking questions like, will I ever be able to experience love again? You experience defeat, and we all have been there, haven't we? We've all been there in defeat. What happens when you experience defeat? I know for me, I'm going to do the we thing. There's power here. For many of us, when we experience defeat, someone telling us, hey, go try that again, that's not really appealing, is it? Go try this thing again. You'll look at that person like, are you mad? I just did that. It just totally went the wrong direction. It didn't work. Why would I do that again? And so for many of us, we'll tell ourselves these lies. We'll say, you know what? I'm just going to put it behind me, walk for it. I'm not even going to look back at it. And so the relationship ends. And you tell yourself, I'm not going to look back. I'm just going to end it and walk away. I'm done with it. That project failed. I'm never going to do it again. I'm just going to get into something else. I don't want to fail again. And we'll tell ourselves these things, won't we? That class, it didn't work. That organization didn't fit with me. They booted me out, whatever it is, I'm done. And you walk away. But the problem is we seem to repeat things, don't we? Yeah. That defeat will be repeated at some point in time again, won't it? That relationship that you thought was over and there was defeat in it, all of a sudden you're in a new relationship, and yet somehow the thing followed you, didn't it? The issues followed you. The business venture you tried, you're doing something else, but that defeat seemed to follow you again. Over and over again. And you're beginning to get frustrated. And then you hear the voice of God say, Tony, cast your net again. And you think, Lord, are you mad? I can't do this thing again. I can't go back into that defeat, you'll tell yourself. It's too painful. There's too much brokenness. And you're scared. And so you don't want to go back into that defeat. How many of you have ever seen this movie? Groundhog's Day. It's such a funny movie. Bill Murray is hilarious. And in this movie, Bill Murray, what happens here is that Bill Murray has to repeat this Groundhog's Day, this one day over and over and over again. And Bill Murray, you'll see, he gets very frustrated with this day. Over and over and over again, and he can't seem to get to the next day. Repetitious, over again. And then he realizes he loves that beautiful woman next to him. And he starts trying to woo her. But the problem is every single day ends and he never quite gets her to fall in love with him. And so he goes back to that defeat over and over again and relives it. Like some of us are doing right now. Reliving the defeat. But something changes in Bill Murray's character. He begins to realize there's something here I need to learn about myself. There's something here powerful that happened that I need to understand. And once he gets that, he wakes up to a new day. And his life continues and he grows and he has this beautiful spiritual awakening. He gets to a place where he realizes life is beautiful, but it's also messy. And some of those defeats, well, I can look back and say, blessed is the broken road. And he gets to that place, and it was so powerful when I first saw that. What defeats do we seem to repeat? For the fishermen, they're told, go back into that defeat. I have two friends, Mark and Matthew. And these guys, have you ever met those people that it just seems like everything they touch just turns to gold? You and your family, you're like, oh, can we change up the beans and rice this week? Can we do like pinto beans instead? And they're like just eating, they've got everything they touch, gold, 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 gold. And you want to be happy for them? And I'm so happy for you. But that was those people. But the more I got to know Mark and Matthew, they lived there in Colorado near us, became good friends of mine. I began to understand they actually failed at things a lot. They were constantly trying things and experiencing defeat over and over and over again. There's this thing called Kickstarter. And on Kickstarter, what you do is you have this weird idea, and you want to get people to help you. So you put your idea out there, and people begin to put funds out for you. And you'll say, my goal is $30,000. If I can get $30,000, I'll give some of you product, and in exchange you'll give me money, and we'll do this thing. It's so great. What Mark and Matthew did is they'd had a bunch of those experiences, and most of them failed miserably. Yet Mark and Matt told me, look, we kept going back to our defeat. We kept reliving it because we understood at some point there was going to be a breakthrough. We kept learning from what went wrong, and we kept trying again. We learned, we grew, we tried again. They have something called, and some of you are going to be like, oh, I saw that video, the fidget cube. It's going all over online right now. It's huge. It's a little keychain thing that you kind of fidget with because we're a very paranoid and anxious culture. Played right into it. They made this little cube that you kind of fidget with. Their goal was $30,000. Mark and Matthew sat down. They were telling me, they were just at our house a couple weeks ago. They told me they sat and watched as they met their goal, $30,000. $30,000 turned into $60,000. 60 to 120. 120 to 400. 400 to 1 million. 1 million to 2, 3, 4, 5. $6.1 million on Kickstarter. 6.1 million. They were just interviewed on Forbes magazine. They are the 11th most grossing Kickstarter group ever to try an endeavor on Kickstarter. Amazing. $6.1 million. And it's because they said we didn't give up. We kept trying again. We understood we had to go back to our defeat in order for us to understand how and where we experience victory. That was Mark and Matthew's story. And so Jesus, he tells them, go back in your defeat. And watch what happens when we go back into our defeat with Jesus at our side, with an encourager, a shepherd. There were so many fish that they had to ask other boats to come and help them. The blessing was so big, there wasn't enough nets to carry all the fish. And this is what happens when we step back into the defeat and we allow God to give us the encouragement and the shepherding we need. And when we do that, we experience a reshaping of our stories. And it's so beautiful. But some of us, we are so terrified to look back, aren't we? That thing is painful, isn't it? That thing causes you anxiety, doesn't it? That thing was painful, it hurt, and you don't want to go back to it, do you? But if you don't go back to it and understand it, you will continue to be defeated over and over and over again. Jesus calls us back onto the boat, back to the defeat, so that he might help us rewrite our stories. He reshapes our past when we understand this gift of encouragement and shepherding. It's what Jesus does. This gift of encouragement and shepherding, I want you to understand something. Jesus shows us these beautiful gifts over and over and over again. And this first gift is one that I've learned to appreciate from so many of you. I will have a terrible week. I'll walk into service, or I'll just be sitting at my desk, and one of you will call me And you'll say, Tony, I love you. I'm so happy you're here. You'll just say something simple like that. And it will touch me so deeply because I needed those words of life spoken into me. And you shared it. Some of us have that gift of encouragement. We draw people back onto the ship. We give them life. We breathe life back into them. The life of Jesus over and over again is Jesus pouring life and encouragement back into people. You can do this. It's not over. Let me breathe life back into you. Encouragement, strengthen, comfort, urge into action those who are discouraged or wavering in their faith. Jesus asks them, come back to the boat. Come back into the defeat. Walk in the defeat. Help me rewrite your story. And then after these disciples bring in the 6.1 million, after they've experienced the success, after they have moved through the defeat, understood the story, Jesus says this to them. He says, now understand, your story is not about fish. It never was. Your story is about learning to do the same thing I just did for you. Learning to help retell everyone else's story. Learning to help breathe life into other people so they can go and do the same. And before you know it, you have kingdom of heaven right here, right now. I'm calling you to do the same. Your story is now redeemed. That was the call of Jesus to his disciples, and we call that gift shepherding. It's when we learn to nurture and care and guide people toward ongoing spiritual maturity, becoming more like Christ. That's the gift, and many of us have that gift. You're able to sit down, and many of us will just like spill out our stuff, just spew it, and you're sitting there. And you're listening. You're actually listening. And then you'll say, you know what, I feel like I'm hearing a trend here. I feel like I'm hearing what about this? What about this? And you begin asking deep questions that are really annoying. And we're like, oh, did you have to ask that? Yeah, I do. I care about you. And they'll ask these questions, and before you know it, we begin to grow and move and change, and our stories begin to be redeemed. Because there are brave encouragers and shepherds in our midst who look like Jesus. For the early church, the Jesus story in the Gospels, there. The early church, what happened is they experienced a defeat, and it was a terrible one. In 70 AD, we have the temple destroyed again. Remember this. Babylonian exile, temple totally destroyed. Whole faith system gone. They're asking, how do we survive this? Is Israel toast? Is this the end of our story? Our business totally bankrupt. Is this the end of our story? And now, 70 AD, the Romans, under Nero, they're totally destroying everything the Jews had. And the Jews are saying, what do we do now? And so, after 70 AD, some writers begin to write the story again. And they retell the Jesus experience. And they share this to bring meaning and hope to people during that time period and for us today. And here's what the Jesus story teaches us over and over again. God inspires, encourages, tells us there is hope. Over and over again, brings healing, restoration, repair for us. Their lives reborn, their diseases healed. People they rise from the dead. He speaks life everywhere he goes. For this early church, they need to hear this. But then the gospel writers understand something. They need to go through the defeat. And so the gospel writers share the story of the cross. The moment where their Messiah is brutally murdered on a cross. A cross, the most horrific place you would murder someone. A place for criminals, murderers, rapists. That's where they hung our Messiah. And so the gospel writers take you through the cross. And the early church lived in that moment. They were in this moment. But then the writers tell you this. After the cross, after the exile, after the temple's destroyed, there is hope just around the corner. There is a resurrection. There is new life. Don't give up. Your story, your defeat story, is not the end. When we face our defeats in light of the resurrected Christ, our defeat, our stories of defeat, they become the victory celebrations that we have. I'm not sure you heard me. In light of the resurrected Christ, our defeats become the victory celebrations that we share with the world. And the world is dying to hear our stories. You need to be willing to share your defeats in order to take them through the victory celebration of how God has changed the way your story is told. That's what the resurrected Christ did for the early church. And that's what resurrected Christ does for us today. And there's hope. And what's beautiful for me is that Peter, he calls Jesus master in the beginning. Master is like this word where there's some space between you and me. He's master. You're higher than me, but we have no real connection. But after miracle, he calls him Lord. So fascinating. Lord meaning in awe of. Because here's the beauty. Your story, your defeat story, there's some distance there, isn't there? There's some pain, there's some brokenness. But if you're unwilling to cross that distance and go there, you will never experience awe. God is calling us to cross the distance, sit in the defeat, and when you do, you will be in awe of the story that unfolds. It may not turn out how you thought. It'll probably be more beautiful. And that's what the disciples learn. Master to Lord. Lord in awe, hope in defeat. And these spiritual gifts I've been talking about, these spiritual gifts, the encourager, that is a spiritual gift God has given you. And I chose to do this one of the first, because sometimes we downplay this one. You think, what do I have to offer? And then you're the one in the brokenness and the pain when someone's hurting, you're the first one to notice. And your heart just connects and you are drawn to them, and before you know it, you're speaking life into them. That is a spiritual gift, and we desperately need you to share it. When you don't share that spiritual gift, the rest of us suffer. We need your gift, because everywhere you go, you just seem to breathe life. We need you to be all you can be so we can be all we can be. Your gift is so beautiful. Please don't hold it back. And then there's that shepherd. That shepherd. That's not the shepherd. The shepherd. It's one after another. The shepherd. We need you to be everything you can be. You're the one that you hear our stories. You help us move through them. You're the shepherd that helps guide us and nurture us and move us, and then brings us to the place where we're able to hear the retold story. And it's retold and we learn from it. We need you to be all you can be. That gift is so powerful in this world. We need you desperately. If that's your gift, please share it. Be courageous. Step onto the boat. Begin sharing it with the rest of us. We need you in community. This is my friend Andrew. I work out. I go to the gym, and you couldn't tell, obviously, but this guy, Andrew, he's at Choose Fitness here in Garden Grove. And Andrew blows my mind. Every time I go into Choose Fitness, when I walk through, Andrew, it freaked me out at first. Because he would say this. Hey, Tony, how's it going? You talking to me? Yeah, Tony, hey. He actually called me Anthony at first because that's what the name thing says. I was like, how you know me? He knows me. He knows my name. It's like Cheers, except I'm sweating. He says, yeah, I know, yeah. And so I go there probably 3 or 4 times a week. And Andrew, he'll ask me personal questions. Hey, how you doing? How's that church? You remember that? Yeah. Oh, where's Tyler and Leo? I don't know. They need to get back in the gym. Totally kidding. It's totally the flip. It's the reverse. And he'll ask me these things. And what I started to notice about Andrew, and I actually asked him if he could be here today, but he's in a wedding, so he told me he was going to watch. So Andrew, what I notice about Andrew is this. Everywhere he goes in the gym, he breathes life into people. And it's amazing that people will be working out, grown men, and I mean really grown, like grown. They'll be working out and just, and Andrew will walk by, and these men will drop their weights and, hey, Andrew. And they'll run up to Andrew. Because Andrew speaks life into people. It's his gift. He's so encouraging, and people are just drawn to that. Can you imagine if that's what our churches looked like? We were the kind of people that breathe life into everything. We redeem people's stories. Andrew's gift is breathing, speaking life into people. It's encouragement. And again, he also has this gift of shepherding. And what he does is fabulous. He listens to the story. He talks with you about your pain, your issue, your whatever, and then he helps move you through it. I see Jesus and Andrew almost every single time I go into the gym. But here's the beauty of this community as well. The reason I get excited every week about coming here is not that I get to get up front and talk and tell jokes and hope you laugh. It's not that at all. The reason that I'm so fired up every single week is because this thing brings so much life to me personally. When I come through these doors, I know that Carlos is going to come up to me and he's going to give me a hug. And he's going to ask me how my week was. He's going to ask me how my kids were. It's Carlos. Great, man. I'm going to see certain people every week. Mike, after every sermon, even when I fail miserably, the joke failed, Mike will give me a big hug and say, best sermon ever, Tony. You know who you are, you people with the gifts of encouragement and shepherding. And you make this service what it is. It's not the preaching, it's not the music, even though the music is so good. It's not that makes this community good. It's the fact that so many of you are willing to breathe life back into all of us every single week. And when we do that, we begin to just breathe out authenticity and growth and love and movement and change. It's the shepherds like Kim and so many who they're just not afraid to go there with you. When you say this, when you say, my week wasn't so good, you cannot walk away from these people. What do you mean it wasn't good? No worries. No, you come back here, Tony. Tell me about your week. And they'll listen and they'll breathe life back into you and they'll help you understand certain things that happen. You are what make this whole thing alive, vibrant, beautiful, life-giving. So today I want to honor those spiritual gifts of encouragement and shepherding. And I want to tell you, you are the people, you're the life force that makes this thing beautiful and authentic and growing. And we are going to continue to learn from you and do our best to go out into the community and breathe life into them, shepherd them as well. And so we honor you today with these gifts, because those gifts are perfect reflections of the Savior we follow, Jesus Christ. My hope and prayer for you is that we continue to become a group of people breathing life into one another every single week. May God bless you today.